This is now a war of logistics, and the side which can sustain uh, its ammunition levels and logistics are the side that's going to win.
And now the next phase of the war is upon us, but no matter how many Russian troops are driven there, we will fight. We will defend ourselves. We will do it every day. Those are the words of Ukrainian President Zelensky last night during his daily televised address as Russia began its long-expected assault in the eastern region of Ukraine in the Donbas. Overnight, Russia claims to have hit more than 1,200 targets in Ukraine with missiles, artillery, and airstrikes. What could this next phase of war look like? Frank Ledwidge is a former military intelligence officer who served in the Balkans, Kosovo, Iraq, and Afghanistan. He's a senior fellow at the University of Portsmouth and a barrister. And Frank joins me now. Thank you very much for coming on Times Radio, Frank. US officials say that Russia now has 76 battalion tactical groups in the east, having added 11 to the area in recent days. How big a challenge is it going to be for Ukrainian forces defending the Donbas region?
Well, Mariella, it's warm today and it's raining heavily in the sectors being attacked now by Russian artillery as we speak. The Ukrainians are going to be subject now to rocket fire, to thermobaric weapons, to heavy artillery. If any listener has seen Band of Brothers, you'll know what being under artillery fire is like. And they will be under the cosh. That said, they knew this was coming. They will have prepared for it, and they'll be dishing out their own messages with their own artillery. And this have started as and will continue as a battle of attrition. My view, and the view I think of many people now, is that the Russians are not ready for this, that they've been ravaged in the north, and that those dozens of battalion tactical groups are simply insufficient for the task of overcoming a very capable defense.
But this is the kind of warfare that suits the Russians, isn't it? This is ground war. This is might, personified, no?
Yes, but let's not underestimate Ukrainians' capability at doing this. They sustained some defeats in 2014, Ukrainians, under these conditions, and they learned from them. And the conditions of battle are not too dissimilar to what we saw before in Sumy in the northeast. Ukrainians were able to take that. But look, they're ready for this. Ukrainians are not simply a third-rate military anymore. These are people who make their own tanks, they export them, they're extremely capable at that tactical level. They've been reinforced with some of the best weapons in the world. They've changed their doctrine entirely and specifically to deal with these traditional Russian methods. They will be taking casualties now, but they're ready for it.
Last night, intelligence chiefs told the Times there's a more positive mood on the Ukrainian side with this belief, as you're articulating, that the Russian army is exhausted and could be pushed back with better weaponry. Do they need the West to step up in terms of supplying them? How crucial is weaponry at this stage, and what do the Ukrainian army need?
Oh, excellent point, Mariella. This war is changing in nature now into a war of attrition. And instead of announcing every week or so the latest weapons that we'll be allowing the Ukrainians to have, what NATO and the West needs to do is make this institutional. Ukrainians are fighting essentially as proxies of NATO. They're fighting for us. What needs to be done now is a constant stream, not the occasional gift of $100 million here, $800 million there. This is now a war of logistics, and the side which can sustain its ammunition levels and logistics are the side that's going to win. And it's NATO that will be supplying Ukraine, and we have to step up to that. And we have not been doing that to a level I think that the Ukrainians are going to need over the next weeks and months.
How out of date, Frank, is Russian equipment in comparison? I mean, we know that the Russians initially used a lot of kind of old lumbering military equipment in their initial sort of onslaught on Ukraine. But do they have better equipment, to bring out now? Or is that pretty much what they have as supplies?
Many of us thought before the war that the Russians had considerably upgraded the quality of their equipment. It's apparent now that's not the case. We also have to bear in mind, by the way, that Ukrainians have much the same kit as the Russians in terms of ground forces, their tanks, their self-propelled howitzers, their artillery, their rocket systems and so forth, just haven't got as much of it. Also, we have to bear in mind that Russian equipment has evidently not been well maintained and is extremely poorly manned. Some pretty good intelligence from the north, for example, that the Russians were trying to operate their tanks with crews of 2, which is 66% of the crew that they should have, probably due to the endemic corruption and ghost manning that they were operating.
What does that mean, ghost manning? Sorry.
Yeah, it's the same sort of thing that the Afghan army was doing. The commanders will say that they've got 800 men and in their unit, for example, in a battalion tactical group, but they may only have 600, but they'll be billing for 800, and so you get chronic undermanning in those circumstances. And traditionally, Russian battalion tactical groups have been undermanned because they essentially, the whole idea is that they're a core of a much larger unit anyway. So. And of course, we can also speak to training and accommodation by Russian forces to the latest tactics, techniques, and procedures of the Ukrainians, because let's not forget, the Russians have to react to the Ukrainians. And the Ukrainians over the last couple of days have been conducting some really powerful and successful counterattacks at Russian supply lines at their really weak point around Kharkiv.
How important is morale in conflicts like this? I guess more specifically, how important is a sense of being on the right side?
Oh, it's vital. Military theorists talk about 3 elements of war. There's the physical component, which you just talked about. It's the conceptual, which is the sort of planning and doctrine. And then there's the moral component, which you just mentioned. And one of the things which seems to be shining out here is the level of let's put it negatively first, hatred for the opposition, and B, of course, love for country. The Russians can't match that moral component. And the moral component also includes things like behavior, professionalism, the ability to control people, the ability to trust your subordinates. The Ukrainians have that, the Russians do not. And one token of that, for example, is the fact they've lost more generals in the last 6 weeks than the Americans managed to lose in 20 years, 6 times more than the Americans managed to lose in 20 years of the War of Terror, or in the war in Vietnam.
Just finally, Frank, though, on the other side of the coin, is winning the Donbas the only way that Putin can emerge from this war without looking like he's messed up, without looking like a failure? And if that is the case, does it up the stakes and make him a much more lethal opponent because he's fighting for his political life, perhaps even more so than territory?
I think so, and that's the risk here. If they fail to achieve a breakthrough through conventional means, we're looking possibly at either a declaration of victory pretty quickly. I don't think that's going to happen, or unconventional means, and that's what a lot of us are worried about.
Well, what do you mean by unconventional means?
Chemical or tactical nuclear weapons, which exist in Russian doctrine and have done for 30 or 40 years.
And is there still a belief amongst military experts like yourself that Putin would go that far?
I would assess it as 10% and no more than that.
Well, that's a relief. Thank you very much, Frank Ledwidge, former military intelligence officer and senior fellow at the University of Portsmouth. Thank you very much for joining me.